Tina was tired, and not just physically, emotionally. Everywhere she turned, there was a child. She was beginning to think that mothers would intentionally shove their children in her face, but that was not the case. Because she didn't have a bundle of joy of her own, it was just too glaring, and she noticed kids of every age wherever she went. She and her husband had seen tons and tons of doctors, and they all had said the same thing. They were healthy, nothing was wrong, and of course, God's time is the best. For an African woman, a family member, most especially a mother and mother in law, had told her that since Western medicine wasn't favoring them, they should go the traditional way. And so came the saga of she and her husband drinking all sorts of herbal concoction. It was one bitter flavor after another. She remembered one being sweet, but the aftertaste was worse than the bitter ones. After a year of herbal drinking, they tried the religious route. So many pastors, dominations, so many churches, you name them all, they have been there. Some asked for money, some asked for livestock, and some asked them to fast and pray. What broke the camel's back was the last pastor they had visited, who asked them to fast for 40 days, eating only fruits. On the 14th day of this fasting ritual, Tinu fainted. That was when her husband said, what was the point of having a child if she died in the process of trying to get pregnant? And so, here she was, 3 years later, shopping at the grocery store with no child. Tinu, is that you? Tinu turned to the voice and she saw a university friend, Folakemi. And of course, the excitement was doused when she saw a friend holding two boys. They were twins, so she plastered a smile on her face. The two friends exchanged greetings and talked about their lives. It was then that Folakemi told Tinu about the trouble she had conceiving her sons and how she was saved from shame when she met Doctor Adeleye. The woman just about performed a miracle. She helped me conceive my children, she said. Tinu was intrigued by the information she heard. A fertility specialist who was helping women. She couldn't keep her curiosity, so she begged her friend to tell her more about this Dr. Adeleye. Tinu didn't tell her husband what she wanted to do. She would rather tell him later when she was successfully pregnant. When Tinu got to Dr. Adeleye's office, the woman and her staff were really friendly. She was given a form to fill. This was to show a purpose in coming in. She told them she was recommended by her friend, and so she was taken for blood tests, and after that, Dr. Adeleye herself performed some exams. After the exams, the doctor informed her that she would be able to help her, but the treatment, drugs, and injections would cost her ₦500,000. If you're enjoying this story, please be sure to subscribe. Tinu already knew this, so she wasn't surprised. She asked for the hospital's account number, but the nurses told her they were having trouble with their bank, and so the payment had to be in cash. Tinu wasn't prepared to withdraw such an amount at the bank, but she didn't want anything to disrupt the process, so she hurried to the bank and hurried back to the hospital. She didn't feel strange about making the payment. She herself had seen pregnant women coming and going out of the hospital. She had talked to a few of them while she was waiting for a consultation. They all had great things to say about the doctor, and they all agreed she was a miracle worker. When Tinu paid the bill, she was taken to another room in the hospital where she had changed into an hospital gown. Then Dr. Adeleye had given her 2 injections and told her the injections and the drug prescribed would help her conceive. So she was to get close to her husband in the next 3 weeks, then come back for a checkup at the hospital. She was told not to go to another hospital since this was where everything started. They would be well equipped and informed to help her in every step of the way. Other hospitals might give her the wrong drugs, or they might not be familiar with their methods. Tinu was fine with anything as long as things go as planned. She had no problem. Even living at the hospital, she was fine with that. That was how desperate she was becoming. Goki had never asked his wife about her spending account. She was a smart woman and she had her own business. although they had a shared account, in which they took money out for expenses and household maintenance. But he was still baffled to see the alert of his wife withdrawing £500,000 in one day. She had her own business account, so he knew it wasn't for her business. He would ask her once he got home, just to be on the safe side. Goke didn't have any chance to ask his question because his wife pounced on him the very moment he entered the house, and this continued for the rest of the weekend, so he forgot all about it. Atinuke lay on the cold table as she tapped her fingers nervously. This was the moment of truth. Was she finally going to be granted the miracle of being a mother? When Doctor Adeleye came back with the test result in her hands, the crack of smile on her face was what gave it away. "Congratulations, Mrs. Tinuke. You are pregnant." Tinuke covered her face and wept. She was afraid that the news would turn false, and she was happy to finally hear what she had always wanted to hear. It was indeed a miracle. She couldn't wait to tell her family members. Doctor Adeleye caught into a train of thoughts. "You must come back every month for a routine checkup, and also the monthly injection. You must take your vitamins. Don't forget you can't refill it anywhere else but here, since our vitamins are made by us." Tinu nodded to all the doctor was saying. Goke was looking at his wife like she was crazy, but he was holding the pregnancy test result in his hands. The story she told him was strange. He knew something was up with her, but he didn't expect the secret life she had been living for 3 weeks. Of course, he was happy. They had been stressed, and he was beginning to feel like he couldn't make his wife happy when they hadn't conceived. They both took it easy. This pregnancy was a blessing, and every one of their family members were happy for them. There was one thing he found strange. It was his wife's dependence on Doctor Adeleye. He knew she probably held her to a high standard, since their bundle of joy came from her. But the fact that his wife absolutely refused to go to any other doctor, even for a checkup, which was strange. Another thing were the drugs they gave her. The drugs had no name, and it was prescribed in a labelless container. Even though his wife's pregnancy was going smoothly, it was simply too weird, and he didn't know where to start. But he did understand why his wife believed the doctor. When he went with her for a checkup, Doctor Adeleye said all the right words. Her words were sweet and drooping, so he understood why his wife held on to her every word. Now at 6 months pregnant, Tinu rubbed her belly. She could feel the baby kicking. She had come to visit her parents with her husband. They wanted to spend time with their parents before the birth of their child. Now they know that their child would be a boy. She was even more excited. "Ow! Ow! Ow! Mom! Mom!" Tinu called. She forgot her mother wasn't home. The pain in her stomach was getting worse, so she called out for her husband. When Goke saw his wife in immense pain, he carried her so gently into the car and drove to the nearest hospital. His wife had passed out from the pain. When they arrived at the hospital, the doctor was informed by her husband that she was pregnant, and so he took her for a sonogram reading to see if the baby was okay. At first, the doctor in charge didn't understand what he was looking at. This woman was clearly physically pregnant, but the sonogram video he was looking at showed that there was no sign of a baby. He quickly covered his expression and told the nurse to bring the patient back to the ward so she could rest properly. He was glad she was unconscious because he wouldn't know what to say to her. He called another one of his colleagues, who was a pediatrician, to look at the sonogram feed. She also said that this woman wasn't pregnant. Both of them were stumped. Her big belly told another story, so they called in her husband and gently told him that his wife was not expecting a child. Goki's first thought was that she had had a miscarriage, but the doctor corrected him and told him that she wasn't pregnant to begin with. Goki didn't understand a word of what they were saying. His wife was clearly carrying a child. Were they blind, or was the machine not working? He screamed at them and threatened them with a lawsuit. so they ordered a blood test. Goke couldn't relax. He didn't know what to do with himself, so he paced up and down outside his wife's hospital room. Soon, the doctor and his colleague came with the result, which clearly showed that his wife was not pregnant. How was this possible? He denied the result and the sonogram feed. He requested that the blood be taken for testing at another hospital, which they were happy to do, because the man looked to be on the edge of insanity. Goke didn't sleep or eat until the second test came back, and it was the same answer. It was at this point that his mind stopped working, because he didn't know what was going on. When Tina woke up, she was in her parents' home. It seemed like the pain she endured was all an illusion, but the bandage on her arm told her it wasn't. Her husband's face looked pale. She knew he must have been scared. Then she touched the stomach and asked if the baby was okay. Goke managed a little smile and nodded to her. She took a big breath of relief and intertwined her husband's fingers with hers before she drifted off to sleep. When Goke was alone, he called his friend, who was a doctor abroad. He explained everything to him. He himself didn't have an explanation for it, but he asked him to take his wife's blood for a full blood work and send him the result. 2 weeks later, Dr. Binga called Goke. He had news for him. He told him that his wife had fallen victim to a fertility scam. When Goke told him how his wife got pregnant and all about Doctor Adeleye, he knew the story sounded familiar. He had heard it in whispers. No one knew the particulars, but they knew it existed. They called it cryptic pregnancy. It was a medical condition whereby a woman wouldn't realize that she was pregnant. But the word had been hijacked by fraudsters in order to prey on couples struggling with fertility. It continued, a woman is convinced that if she visits a cryptic nurse or doctor, she is going to get an injection and drug that would help her conceive. Goke interrupted his friend and told him his wife had felt the baby kicking several times and even had morning sickness and all the symptoms a pregnant woman would. Dr. Benga told him that because she truly believed she was pregnant, she would experience everything a pregnant woman would. Dr. Benga told him that his wife's body reacted badly to the drugs they had given her, and that was why she had an intense pain in her stomach. But he assured him that there was no damage to her womb or uterus. Goke went silent for a while. Then he thanked his friend for helping him. Goke grabbed his keys. His next stop was to his cousin's house, who was an inspector general. Doctor Adeleye was hurled away like a sack of potato by the police. The hospital was turned over and ransacked, and all the patients that were in the waiting room were invited to the police station. After 3 days of no sleep, water, and food, Dr. Adeleye was singing like a canary. She told them all about the scam, and when they had asked her where she got the children from, she told them about the secret brothel where she got the babies from, and how she approached parents with underage children who got pregnant by one means or another. She told them how much she offered them to buy their baby from them. When questioned about how the women she scammed didn't realize they weren't pregnant, she told them she didn't really need to work hard to convince them. The society and cultural pressure that were put on women to have children made them believe and act like they were pregnant. And when their due date was nearing, they would ask the patients to come in a week before and give them injections that would mimic childbirth pain. And of course, when they took the women into the labor room, they would put her under anesthetics. And when they would wake up, they would see a newborn baby gotten from the women she paid. And sometimes they would perform C-sections, lacerations on women to keep up the ruse. When asked if any of these women and their spouse ever caught on, she said, "Of course not. They would never question it. They wanted a child and I gave them one. I am a miracle worker." Goke heard from his cousin. and he knew he had to come clean to his wife before she saw the news. Atinuke sat there, dazed with no emotion or life in her eyes. She saw nothing but black. It took visiting 10 different pediatricians and her seeing the expose on Doctor Adeleye on the news to believe it, and of course, the descent of her stomach to bring reality to a full circle. A year later, Tino cradled her daughter to her chest. It was so strange. She didn't even know she was pregnant for 4 months until a friend of hers pointed out that she looked heavy with child. She didn't believe the pregnancy she had bought either. Her husband had to drive her to 3 different hospitals before she believed that she was pregnant. And even then, she was skeptical until she went to labor and the most precious human being was put in her heart. The end. What do you guys think about the story, Atinuke's struggle, and of course, Doctor Adeleye, which is an evil human being? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.